Dude, we had a streak of like 6 spaces with not getting rugged, and this one, just classic, man.
Damn, all good.
Let's we can do a little small talk while we guys again. Please retweet the thing, especially now they got rugged. It's so annoying. I just spammed the Discord and all the chats again with this. Yeah, we can do like a little small talk while we get people back in. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Elon's got to fix this app, bro. This app is crazy, man. Yeah, how you been, dude? I think we were talking about Hyper EVM and seeing like, bro, dude. I was just talking to who was it? I was talking to Toshi from Hyperbeat like an hour ago, and I was saying to him, I was like, dude, I feel like I'm not even like bull posting anymore. Like we did so much bull posting, and then like now it's just like you wake up and like one day USDT is deployed on Hyper EVM with like millions of liquidity. The next day, Phantom's got like hyperliquid perps. You know what I mean? Like you just like watch it happen in real time, and I'm like, even just over a couple months, it's insane. And where are we gonna be in a few months, man?
Yeah, it's getting to the point where it's like every day there's a new huge announcement. Every week is kind of like a new rollout for something huge. So it's just really exciting to see everybody take foot. I mean, Hyperbeat has been killing it in terms of their like distribution and engagement of the community as a whole. I think like a lot of the projects on here have like really been like just growing into their shoes, right? Like everybody who was live day one, I think, has kind of like cemented themselves as like a hyperliquid DeFi like blue chip protocol at this point. Um, Including the Hypios, of course, right? Like Hypios was huge for days, like getting behind all of these projects and getting like the real attention on everyone. So I mean, it's just been great being part of the whole thing and seeing like being able to grow with like genuine friends who are builders, you know. I think that's like the one huge difference about Hyperliquid ecosystem at this point is like the people in the know like are all these projects that went live day one. It feels like we kind of like feel the narrative coming with things like Core Writer, like you know, a lot of these lending protocols starting to use like perps for as collateral. It's just the stuff that makes sense and everybody here is friends trying to build on it together, which is really cool.
It is, man. I think, like we have seen a bit of PvP like the last couple of months. Like you start to see some of it come in. I think it's so like short sighted where it's like, dude, if you're building something of value here, and you differentiate yourself and you find your niche, whether it's loop type or whether it's, whatever it is you're doing, which I meme coin or whatever. It's like, stop thinking like so small, like, you know what I mean? Like we're literally like, I hate to do the cliche, like we're so early, but like, dude, uh, I don't think people realize just how big it's going to get. Like, yeah, it's big, but like, I don't think people actually comprehend where this is going. And it's just like unironically like zoom the fuck out, like we still have price action topping on all of Jen's videos. Like we're so early.
Literally. And I think like it just goes to show like how early we are because it feels like aside from just like the hype with like community native projects, right? Like Hyper Fun or you know, PvP who are using builder codes. There really hasn't been anybody like to pop out of the woodworks using builder codes that in a really big way, but like Phantom Wallet like just did their huge rollout of you were saying. And I feel like it's getting so much, and they're using the builder codes, right? And I feel like it's just getting so much more traction even than like Kraken or Coinbase, like making perps available for their users. You know, like it just feels like there is so much more here. We are still early, and like the big guys are literally just starting to like understand how much there is in this ecosystem right now.
No, this next phase, and I love like, it's cool to see everybody sort of congealing around that Shoku as this S tier builder and this, below this team of obviously Hyperliquid, it's like S plus plus tier. But I think, to glaze him for a second, like what he said today about the Solana onboarding and like how Phantom's a big step of it, like that is like this missing piece, and that's like we try to do our part in it and it's almost inconsequential. Like I don't actually think it is, but we're trying to like get like the cultural element and bring on some of that aspects that Solana has in terms of like, real people kind of like, whether it's making coins off of relevant things or just building really cool things that aren't explicitly so finance based, which is like, we have a lot of that stuff, like LoopedHype is a great example of that. And that's what's great about Hyperliquid, but we don't like the cultural side as much. It's still very early on that aspect. But what he's doing in terms of targeting Solana for literal onboarding, whether it's deposit Solana, deposit Fartcoin, deposit pump. I was just saying today, I think you got to get Bonk on there with all the energy that they've got around Bonk. A great team.
Yep.
This is like, it's like the I drink your milkshake. Like, why don't we just like become a Solana L2 in that sense, and like onboard them like that.
100%. I bet like a really cool team to look out for right now is like the Project X team. it seems like they're doing a good job like drumming up some hype and attention to onboard a big, massive retail users from that ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I think that I don't know where they come from specifically. I know a lot of them are from Blast, so it'll be interesting to see if they bring some of that dormant kind of trapped ethity from people who farm like EVM stuff. Because I know that he did the Pac Moon thing.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see if he brings like kind of like that Azuki crowd, this kind of um, somewhat MIA. There's some of them over here, but not fully.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like as more like ecosystems kind of catch on to like bridge their group of people over, like we'll see I feel like it'll just come in waves like that, right? Like you'll see certain ecosystems just like recognize that this is really instead of thinking of it as a way to like, I don't know, like remove people from their own ecosystem, it's really just like a way to extend. Like Hyperliquid has so many different ways that you can plug into it aside from just like directly bringing users onto Hyper EVM and getting them to use the products.
Absolutely. This conversation is really interesting, and it ties into what we're trying to do with our future bunch of upcoming spaces. We're gonna have a great space about meme coins, and then I think Empress and us are gonna do a space, and we're gonna do some really interesting space. And I love the convo in this space, but this one's about LoopedHype. Actually, I bet you guys had some great convos at the thing you guys had in New York. I wasn't able to go that day, but I heard about it. I heard it was great. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then we can segue into like introducing LoopedHype for 4-year-olds, and then LoopedHype for people who know what DeFi is.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think like just going from my side, right? Like we built the Looping Collective and LoopedHype in collaboration with Staking Rewards team. Like I work at Nucleus. We do a lot of the infrastructure and like the financial management and economic risk analysis of these structured products. And Staking Rewards helps us a lot with like the distribution and getting the word out there. And one of the things that they really specialize in doing is hosting great events. We've been going to their events for a long time. We've been working alongside them for a long time in like the ETH staking space. And time again, I feel like their events are some of the best ones. Not to glaze them, of course, but this one was super cool because I think it was like one of the first major like Hyperliquid events outside of like the Hypio meetups that have been going on in New York City. And us at Nucleus, we're like a New York team. And there's a ton of other like super interesting crypto projects that are in New York. And surprisingly enough, a lot of them are super interested in Hyperliquid, right? A lot of people showed up. We had a lot of like familiar faces there, like the HyperFi guys ran a stand there. And you know, it was just great to get the word out about like the Looping Collective, but also to see everybody coming together to hang out. You know, there's a lot of cool teams that we do get to be around pretty frequently. And I think it's kind of like it is a different crowd than just like the typical like DeFi teams that we hang out with. You know, there's like the PvP team. I think like there's this one influencer, her name's like Pasta or something like that, and she shows up and does a lot of like cool little videos around New York City and whatnot. So getting to see that side of it, like the marketing side, and everyone like show up in person and really be gung ho about what we're doing was just like super duper exciting. So you know, I'd like to say that event was a success. I think we got a lot of institutional interest there as well. And you know, I think like it really is, it's just like another example of like we're still early. It's not like it was super bloated, like one of the typical crypto events that people like walk from complaining. But it was very productive in my opinion. So next one we'll like have to do something like in collaboration with Hypio. There was actually a hype like the day after, but maybe we can do something like the after party of the Looping Collective event.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was just making sure that you're co-host because the space like briefly rubbed me while you were talking, and I just wanted to make sure it's secure. Yeah, no, absolutely, we could do something. And I've loved our New York City events. We've had 2 community-run ones. I think you were part of the first one with Carson, right?
Yeah, we ran the first one at
Yeah,
a barbecue joint. It was super fun.
yeah, that was super dope. Like I heard from the people who went there, they loved it. And then Mistaken President ran one at Radagast, which people were saying was a blast. I think it's so cool that a great group of Hypios in New York, and then our party. I don't know if you made it to the party, but the party was a huge hit. So it's been a lot of fun. I definitely, we're planning on doing events all over the world. So we're definitely going to be doing non-New York City stuff. But there's clearly this group of New York City people here in Hypio and Hyperliquid that we can't wait to keep doing stuff with them. We can definitely do stuff. Why don't we go through LoopedHype as a product? I love to kind of go through it for like 4-year-olds because this is going to be a podcast like in posterity that people can go back and watch, and they can learn like what is LoopedHype, what is looping, what is, you could even go over what is staking and liquid staking very briefly. Just for those people who are total, laymen who don't know. And then after that, maybe go into it at a higher level? I know you guys have been shipping more elements of the project at large.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, it's so I guess we can start with the idea of like the looping collective, right? The looping collective is just this umbrella that we're like my team, the nucleus team, in collaboration with the staking rewards team, and also in collaboration with other like teams throughout the Hyperliquid ecosystem. We're launching like these cool structured products underneath. The first one was LoopedHype, and ultimately like our vision for LoopedHype is like how can we just get the highest yield on hype and make it tokenized in a way that people can use it in DeFi. I think like that's the most important part is like this composability or like being able to like actually take your yield like it's just any other token and maybe use it in a lending market so that you can borrow dollars against it or you know find ways to generate even more yield like looping L hype. But on that note, I guess like to start jumping into the strategy, you know, we've been able to essentially get like 2x the staking yield at this point. Um, mm, the staking yield obviously is like generated by like these validators, who like basically work on top of the Hyperliquid blockchain to make sure that everything is running correctly, that it's not being hacked or anything. The validators passed like this vote back in the day during the Jelly situation to kind of like roll back the chain. That's like one of the functionalities that they get paid for. Um, and so like with this yield, you can like package it up into liquid staking tokens, right? And these liquid staking tokens are like Thunderhead's like StakeHype, STHype, or like Kinetic's kHYPE. And so like these liquid staking tokens, they package up that validator yield and let you get exposure to it in pretty cool ways. Something that I'll talk about like a little bit later on when we touch on maybe like V3 stuff is how like those validators and like our relationship as the looping collective with those validators will really like play an impact into LoopedHype. Basically we have these LSTs. They like pool deposits and let people get like a tokenized version of the yield. And so like we have people deposit those LSTs into LoopedHype. And so that's the base yield in our mind, right? Like 2% is basically the base staking yield for Hype on Hyperliquid. And to get the highest yield possible, we need to figure out a way to drive a premium on that. And our like experience for the past couple of years has been pretty close to leverage staking. So we've worked with Ethereum leverage looping in the past. We really worked with teams like Gauntlet and Chaos Labs to pioneer exchange rate based pricing, which is basically pricing an asset by like the amount of deposits that have been deposited in there plus the total amount of value that has accrued to it. So this is like WST hype, which over time goes to like a 1.02, like hype per WST hype. And so being able to price things this way, you take away like the market price risk or depeg risk, which like really minimizes your chances of liquidation and increases like the efficiency and like security of this like leverage looped position because it makes getting liquidated a lot less likely. So with that in mind, like we're very gung-ho on this type of strategy because we know how to run it safely. We know how to not get liquidated when we're borrowing against our positions. And we also know how to like really underwrite like lending market infrastructure to pick the right venues to borrow. And so when it comes down to actually like getting this premium on the staking yield, what do? We collateralize something like ST hype or something like kHYPE, and we borrow hype against it so that there's like this spread between what we're earning from the LST, kHYPE or ST hype, and what we're paying to borrow. Right now on a lot of our favorite like lending markets like HyperFi and Hyperlend, that's like a 1% spread. So every time we borrow, we are essentially making 1% of profit on like the cost of borrowing there. And by levering up, we can get to basically what has been 2x the staking yield right now. We're like 4x loops of our total TVL, which essentially means like we hold a million hype and we're earning money on 4 million hype basically because of like this trade. And so that's what's been able to get us to 2x the staking yield, roughly like 4%. And that's like LoopedHype in its entirety. Uh, just to boil it back down, it's like
Sure.
the goal is to get the highest yielding, like liquid version of Hype possible. And that's what we've been able to do through this like leverage looping strategy.
So on the one thing, there's two things I want to go over here. One is very obvious to pretty much anybody who's in the space. Like, why would you want to do this? Well, like, the yield is quite small just for vanilla staking, right? The true yield is the fact that Hype is like this precious asset that, as we were talking about at the beginning of the space, like there's just so much going on with it that you do not have enough. Nobody has enough. People don't realize that this isn't Solana or ETH, where there is going to be more and more over time. ETH is it's a different conversation about whether that's true or not, but like technically it is true that they're not deflationary, right? So it's this asset that like everybody's super bullish on. There's a reason why you would leverage Loop it so that you can enhance that yield, which is again very relatively small, but the real kind of hidden yield is that Hype is going up and has been going up and is kind of that one asset in the market other than Bitcoin that has been super strong and showing that everybody's realized doing it. And it keeps adding catalysts and this Phantom thing is like, let's see how many fees we get once Phantom really is in the mix here. And it's establishing this floor with how many buybacks are happening. And it's just such an exciting product. So it's like, of course you want to maximize your yield and be very careful what you spend your Hype on. The other part of it is like, okay, so there's no free anything, right? There's nothing that happens without risk. So is the risk here? You've talked about using lending on over collateralized lending platforms, but then kind of pushing that to the limit. What are the, I'm sure you're mitigating it, but what are the general risks to this?
Yeah, so like I said, we work with the lending protocols to price things in a way where like essentially it's based off of exchange rates. So the price of WST Hype is always increasing. I think a lot of the risks actually come when either we see people like over borrow Hype. So that's when like utilization on a borrowing market like goes above this optimal level, and you end up having to pay like more than what the staking yield is. So that makes the trade like unprofitable. And we have like automated bots to help deleverage from any type of situation like that. So, you know, if that ever occurs, which it does a lot, especially on markets like HyperFi, then we can adjust like the position to accommodate for that. And we do that pretty frequently and it happens automatically. So there's that risk. And then when HIP3 comes out, it's going to introduce this idea called slashing. That slashing is basically if somebody does something wrong, like in the validator set, like they're going to essentially take away and penalize that validator by taking away some of their Hype. And that might make like the NAV or like the net asset value of any of these LSTs like decrease. So really like if we're using exchange rate based pricing, that's the only way that it's going to be decreased. And that if there's like a really, really big scenario like that, then we'll probably, have to deleverage a lot, perhaps face liquidation risk. But I think the whole goal is to diversify, like the goal of the Hyperliquid themselves is to diversify the validator set, make sure that there's no kind of like acting in a malicious way and colluding. And it's our goal to diversify ourselves across multiple different validators so that we don't really face any of that risk. Now, I will say the cool thing about LHype is that we can diversify a lot of these risks away by spreading across multiple different lending markets, different market parameters. So we have to adjust for those different types of scenarios. And in our mind, at least, this kind of like takes away from like our concentration to either a more aggressive lending market or less, and like allows us to gain exposure to less aggressive ones. And on top of that, like by diversifying across these underlying protocols, all of that borrowing, all of that leverage looping is at the same time helping to compensate for any risks by gaining a premium, like additional yield on top, by being like the largest position holder and points holder on a lot of these protocols, right? So not only are LHype users like getting this like increased Hype yield, but they can also kind of like account for that risk being taken care of by like the additional yield that will come from incentives and rewards from the underlying protocols, as well as like our own internal tokenomic mechanism for the loop.
Are you saying because LoopedHype is technically farming Hyperland and HyperFi respectively, and then soon kHYPE, and then technically Thunderhead's stake type, you're saying the airdrops from that will go into the yield?
Yeah, Well, they'll be redistributed to users, but they'll be able to realize that. So if you're thinking about risk from like an economic and accounting perspective, the way that like we have to do it as like money managers, you're kind of gonna say like, okay, like how much yield am I gonna get out versus like how much yield is like of risk am I taking on, right? And can I justify that much risk by like this outsized amount of yield? And that's our goal to really be able to justify like the risk of leverage looping at higher leverage levels by also like working with these protocols to streamline incentives towards markets that LHype is you know actually performing this strategy on. And luckily we get to do it with some of like the best underlying assets, right? Like stake type and kHYPE. Both markets very high demand. The lending protocols want to work with us um to help like bootstrap those markets, and we've been really instrumental in getting them up and helping like drive liquidity to them.
Yeah, I was looking at the Hyperland points yesterday. I saw LoopedHype is top on there. One thing before we move past this kind of introductory to looping and LoopedHype for dummies or whatever. There's one other risk, which is of course contract risk, just so we like cover the bases. But this is part of why like we love Hyperland. And LoopedHype on your side, you guys are from like Nucleus and other projects that have been building this space, have been battle tested and done a lot. But Hyperland, for instance, is the friendly fork of Aave. Aave is obviously a huge protocol. And as the friendly fork, they get, a heads up on any sort of bugs that are going on Aave's side in advance. And there's a reason why they fork for these protocols, is because they're battle tested. You know what I mean? If you're doing something new, then it's hard to get it's like $1/3 billion in Hyperland right now. So it's like there's a real reason why they do that. So there is contract that's heavily mitigated. But yeah, I just wanted to flag that for the people who might not understand that aspect of it.
I will say like one of the biggest things that we've noticed on like on HyperEVM is like number one, like the difficulty of like verifying smart contracts on all the different like block explorers. But then also number two, being able to like stand behind that and back up those smart contracts with audits. And we do like a lot of work to make sure that there's due diligence being done into those protocols, into those teams, into the smart contracts, as well as just like simply waiting until everything is verified to really like deploy the strategy and size on any of them. So I totally agree. I think these things are like very high signal for like the types of projects that you want to be running like very large size strategies on, right?
Absolutely.
Hyperfy themselves, like when Aave fork, they're very experienced operators,
Oh yeah, they've been in the space for years.
100%. Felix, they're also running a licensed version of Morpho, which is huge. And so like,
Are they not using Liquid now, or they use Liquid?
well, they use Liquidity for the CDP, which is Felix. And then there's Morpho Vanilla, which is run by the Felix team, which is like a separate lending market that uses Morpho smart contracts.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to flag before we move on to, I've seen a couple announcements for you guys. I'd love to touch on, what the recent stuff you guys are doing. The other is that you guys are probably going to be implementing kHYPE, is what it sounds like. And kHYPE itself has a very interesting sort of risk management system. They've also been in the space for a long time, but we did a whole podcast with them. You guys can go back and see. But they have, I forget the name of what it's called, but they have this system that's basically an objective, it's an objective analysis of the validators, and they spread it across the validators by performance. So it's all spread out, and then that mitigates slashing risk. Whereas something with like Thunderhead, I think you can choose who you want to stake with on Thunderhead, so it's not necessarily as mitigated as kHYPE's approach is very interesting. So that's another kind of resilient aspect of this mix here for LoopedHype. But yeah, why don't we talk about what you guys are been working on? Anything new stuff going on?
So new stuff in terms of LoopedHype, I think, like you said, kHYPE is going to be onboarded very soon. We are also, like, as it relates to kinetics, looking into potentially making use of iHype. We have like a lot of institutional partnerships that we can leverage, and a lot of them are getting a lot more comfortable and warmed up to like the Hyperliquid ecosystem. So we're getting a lot more inbound like interest in doing something like that. I think like if we were to spin up a validator from the looping collective side of things, that would be a very like efficient way to bootstrap something like that, because iHype, similar to like Thunderhead, allows you to stake with individual validators. And getting any type of institutional size would really help bootstrap something for the likes of like being able to use the capital to fund an HIP3 operation. So like all of that stuff, fine. The hype and institutional staking side is like within our sights. I think it's something that like we're working on very diligently to make sure that we understand like who all the like super large players are going to be in this space as they come in to like really take role in HIP3. And typically like that's going to be market makers, right? So understanding like who are these like institutional market makers who also have validator like and infrastructure arms that are probably going to be like the best position to really scale HIP3 and the different perp markets on Hyperliquid. That's kind of like been one of our main focuses on the hype and the hype staking side over the past month or two. Now, in addition to that, we've also launched WHLP. You know, there's been a whole lot of different like wrapped and tokenized versions of HLP that came out. Ours is WHLP. We launched it with Hyperlend, and the goal is to really just like have something sustainable that we can kind of like build other high yielding stablecoin products with. Right? You can envision something like a looped HLP, or maybe like a combination of a portfolio of assets like stake USDE and WHLP in a portfolio. And on the WHLP side, in addition to going to market with Hyperlend, we're using like USDHL from the Felix team as the primary underlying asset. That way we can, you know, drive a lot of earns from our market making activities on Hypercore, as well as allow users to earn like outsized returns when they LP into USDA WHLP pools. Because the way USDHL works, if you're not aware, is like they generate like treasury yield from like the underlying like stable coins of USDHL. And with that treasury yield, they buy back hype and split it 50-50 amongst 50% to like AMM LPs who are LPing to like sponsored USDHL pairs, as well as 50% Hypercore market makers of the USDHL market. And so all of our WHLP USDHL pairs are sponsored on Felix. You can LP into them and earn like pretty high stablecoin yield, which is really cool in our opinion. We like this idea of having like volatile strategies with something like L hype, or the price of L hype, or where the price of hype is, you know, all over the place a lot of the time, but you really get beta exposure to the entire ecosystem and hype as an asset, as well as like maybe these risk off types of strategies with WHLP or like other stablecoin high yield strategies. So that's the second thing that we've been really working on. And then I'd say like the third thing is just the rollout of our native token Loop and the staked version of it, ST Loop, which like Loop works in three real ways. Like we have TVL based unlocks for it. So each time we hit a new TVL benchmark as outlined in like our docs, we'll be airdropping like a new wave of Loop to like the community who's been earning points along the way. You know, we also are using this Loop to incentivize a lot of these markets, help people kind of like get an outsized risk for or an outsized return for helping us bootstrap these markets as we go live with the different products. And then the third thing is like we're doing weekly buybacks with like 10% of the yield from both L hype and WHLP to Loop, and then using that to redistribute it back to the community on a weekly basis based off of like the points that you're accruing just by holding L hype or WHLP. And then like with that Loop, you know, we've made this whole system where people can stake the Loop into ST Loop. They get like a higher multiplier based on the amount that they stake, and that just like increases their aggregate like weekly returns of Loop from these buybacks, as well as Loop distributed on the TVL based unlocks. So if you can like think a little bit abstractly, like the whole Loop tokenomics and everything is really just to feed our community and get them like increased exposure to you know, L hype, WHLP, and any other like products that we launch in the future, since we'll be having like super deep pools for like Loop L hype, Loop WHLP. And the biggest thing there is that we just launched ST Loop on the spot Hypercore markets, so that you can buy ST Loop on Hypercore and immediately like get access to those points boost by holding more of it and getting to those different tier levels for the points boost.
Sick. That's awesome. You guys are cooking, man. I think now that we're sort of in the last third of it, anybody who wants to come up and ask questions, who record that duck, I'll put a call for anyone who has questions. But yeah, that's been great. I think it's very informative for people who want to learn about loop type, and you guys are definitely cooking on a lot of cool stuff. I didn't realize you guys were the ones who did the WHLP with Hyperland. Dude, there's been so much cool stuff. The USDHL, man, I got a USDHL hype pool, and it's like, it's gotta be my favorite pool right now, dude. It's just like, if I'm gonna go into stables, I want USDHL, dude. Like, I love having skilled on my stables, the best.
I totally agree. No, and also like you can keep it productive as well. Like the whole incentive is to make sure that you make the market deeper. So I think USDHL is going to be like a really standout asset on Hyperliquid. They're using like M0 underlying it, which is like an amazing asset issuer of stablecoins and T-bills on chain. So I really believe in it. Obviously like Max is working with them on all of this. My good
Yeah,
friend.
and then Max and I think another guy from that team, at the Hyperco thing. I don't know if you were there last week ago. And they seem super smart and on it.
Hell yeah. I was there briefly, but not for too long. It looks like Martin has a question though.
Yeah,
He-
yeah, of course. Anybody with a Hypio PFP is allowed to come out. Yeah. Also, dude, I was there. The founder of Aave was in the elevator with us. There's some big people there. We met the I know guys. It was a great event to around. What's up, Arden?
Oh, what's up, guys? How you doing?
Pretty
I
good.
feel
How
like
you
it's
doing?
better than it's. Yeah, no, it's good, bro. Yeah, we just we're cooking right now. Duck. Oh, when looping collective x NEKO.
Very like as soon as NEKO is live, I think we're gonna be going live with NEKO. Do you want to be the one to tell people about this, or should I spill the beans?
You can, yeah, bro. It's your space.
I mean, so I've been a huge fan of Martin and everything that he's cooked in the past. I think like his knowledge of AI is like unfounded in this space, really, and that's kind of like what we need to take like DeFi with AI to like the next level. And they're gonna be cooking a lot of cool like products with some of your like favorite dexes, and we're gonna make sure that like they're well incentivized and get super deep liquidity. Um, and is going to optimize like the yields of these LP pools, basically like automated liquidity managers for the hype WHLP USDHL pairs. So whatever you're earning right now, imagine it like super optimized plus looping collective like loop rewards on top. We're going to make it really huge. Right now, hype is the deepest liquidity asset on Hyper EVM. We have like the deepest AMM pairs on HyperSwap and Kitten Swap and Laminar and Hybra. And WHLP similarly is extremely deep liquidity on all of those dexes as well. And we just plan to run it up even more with this, because really like that deep liquidity, super optimized liquidity is not just great for users, but it's great for like us as a protocol to help integrate hype all over there will be a lot more DeFi integrations, especially once we can enable even deeper liquidity, just because of like the added risk of money markets saying, oh, we want to let you loop hype, right? Maybe people want to do that, and having super deep liquidity for something like that will be really beneficial in making it possible.
Yeah, one thing I want to know, I think it is entirely possible to like for an hype LP, with like an ALM. If we do plan on using a 4626 volt approach, we can actually have a LP or like a name in pool for that market as well, and then we could potentially get that listed on like a risk escalated market, so we could loop that on top of the looping rewards we're doing in half of the LP as well.
So yeah, basically crazy yield coming out of this collab. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, we're talking about real yield.
That's for real.
Yield and hype is my favorite yield, man. But yield in any asset, when I can buy more hype, I take that too.
That's facts.
So yeah, if anybody else who has questions before we wrap this up, feel free to request. Thank you, Roger. That was get everybody excited about NEKO. I can't wait for NEKO to launch. And then any ETA on when we're gonna still go?
Yeah, we're in like the final stages of NEKO product development. There's some things we're working on in terms of like the execution for that's slight change, but yeah, we're just optimizing the UI further, and like we're backtesting the strategies and simulating them. We're gonna start off with like very basic strategies in the early days, but then we're gonna not slowly expand it, but make them more robust. So like implementing like vol predictive models, price predictive models, so you can have like tighter ranges. Because when it comes to like LP management, all these different like ALMs, they are a bit facetious in like the yield that they project on the front end. Whereas like in reality, they'll be like, oh, like you're earning like 120% in fees, but then that's not accounting for impermanent loss. It's a tricky game to balance where like if you want to have a wider range, you're gonna lose out on that fee capture. But if you chase too many fees, then you're just gonna get chopped up by IL. So we're just doing we're doing a lot of research on that and just ensuring that we have like a balanced approach, and then in the future we could potentially optimize the ranges further with using predictive modeling.
Emp, you got something for Doc?
No. Hi, Doc. Sorry, nice to meet you. I just wanted to come up and thank you guys. And then I just wanted to say real quick, especially with like the way that things are accelerated, if people could please remember to share these type of spaces out. People still think that Hyperliquid is really only a perps trading thing. And I think that these are so informative and educational, and the fact that people take the time to do it, it's really, really helpful. So I just wanted to remind people they can always refer back to these things as resources, and just thank you guys again.
And she seems
Absolutely.
Let's put this one in the history books.
All right. Well, yeah, I think Emp, we know that.
I couldn't tell. Did they mean 5 p.m.? If it's PST, then yes, we do. But I couldn't. They didn't answer. So wasn't sure.
Oh, 5 p.m. PSP? Yeah, we could do tomorrow 5 p.m. too.
Then yep, I got you for sure.
Okay, base. All right. Well, thank you, Doc. Rarded.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this. This was awesome. I added like a little article up here talking about like the new stuff that we might do with HYP3. So if anybody's interested, go ahead and read it, or you can DM me whenever. Always down to talk more.
Check out LoopedHype, guys. And I wish you guys all a good Wednesday. Have a good day, guys. Thanks so much for talking. Have a good day, guys.